establishing verification mechanisms and marketing amulets, basic understanding and planning guidelines. Many of you may not yet be familiar with the concept of creating verification mechanisms and marketing amulets, which I am currently working on. This is a matter that requires legal understanding and systematic planning. Components of amulets in the market. First, we need to understand the types of amulets currently available, which can be divided into two main categories. Genuine amulets created for a specific occasion, meaning amulets that are produced according to the intended purpose, intention, rituals that are appropriate for the era, and beliefs. Amulets that are not created for the original occasion may refer to those produced later without connection to the original ritual or intention, or amulets that are newly made imitations. The importance of understanding legal aspects and planning the creation of this mechanism requires careful consideration of all relevant legal aspects, whether it be laws concerning consumer protection, commerce, advertising, or even specific laws that may relate to antiquities or artifacts, in order to ensure that operations are conducted properly and transparent. In addition, planning and setting policies and systematic planning are important factors that will help make this mechanism effective and sustainable, covering everything from establishing standards for inspection how to concretely distinguish genuine amulets from fake ones and gain acceptance. Building credibility will foster trust among buyers, sellers. How will marketing strategies be presented, and how will certified amulets be promoted and introduced to the market in an appropriate way and reach the target audience? Starting from this point will help us establish a clear system and be beneficial to the amulet industry in the long run. Understanding amulets that are in the correct period and those that are not, you have already provided a clear definition. To make it even clearer, I will summarize and further elaborate on each type as follows. Amulets created in the correct period. These are amulets that originate from production specifically made for significant events or ceremonies with clear historical evidence supporting their creation and can be traced back. For example, the Phra Samdeh Wat Rakang amulet was created by Samdeh Phra Buddhakarya Thopromorangsi during the reign of King Rama IV, and it has a documented history of its creation, the materials used, and its unique Buddhist art style, which collectors and experts can use these as criteria for authentication. Amulets created to commemorate a temple anniversary, for example, may be produced on special occasions such as temple renovations or to honor a revered monk's birthday or achievements, with records documenting their creation, and the consecration ceremony is clearly documented. Important attributes include a well-documented creation history, supporting evidence such as creation records, old photographs, and eyewitnesses. The amulet must have been created with pure intentions for that specific occasion, featuring Buddhist art and materials that are consistent with the era and the source of the materials. Amulets that are not created for the intended occasion refer to those produced by imitation methods, with appearances that closely resemble amulets made for the original occasion, but which have no connection to the original creation event or the original creator. For example, counterfeit or fake amulets are made to deceive buyers into believing they are genuine by imitating the Buddhist art, materials, or even the distinctive marks of authentic amulets, but are actually produced later and have no connection to the original creation event. Supplementary amulets or recast amulets are those that are produced later using the original mold or by making a cast from a genuine amulet, but they have not undergone the original rituals or intentions. Newly made commemorative amulets that are produced without certification, or amulets made as souvenirs or for commercial purposes without proper rituals or authentication from the original creators, have important characteristics. They lack a creation history connected to the original event and may differ in terms of Buddhist art style. The materials, composition, or production methods, when compared to genuine amulets, are often created with commercial gain in mind. By relying on their resemblance to genuine amulets, this classification is a key element in establishing the verification mechanism you are working on, as it allows us to distinguish and establish effective standards for amulets in the market. The issue of amulet authentication standards in the past, whether based on feelings or deception, is a very important point you have raised. Regarding the issue of amulet authentication standards in the past, which has long been evidence of a lack of transparency in the industry, When amulets were divided into those created in the proper occasion, genuine amulets, and amulets created outside the proper occasion, counterfeit or imitation, amulets there naturally arose the need for methods of authentication and verification methods, which nowadays increasingly involve the use of scientific equipment. However, in the past, the issues you pointed out were indeed real occurrences. That is, the problem with the standards for amulet authentication has persisted up to the present. In the past, the determination of authenticity was made by certain groups of individuals, those who claimed to be experts. In the past, the authenticity of amulets was often determined by groups or individuals who claimed to be experts, and these people had significant influence in guiding the market and the amulet community. The question you asked about what they use to establish rules, whether it's just their own feelings or if they band together to deceive others, is a very pertinent question, and it excellently reflects the underlying problems. For the most part, experts in the past tended to use these things as the basis for their judgments, personal experience, and accumulated information, subjective experience, memory of flaws, and the expert's template. They rely on memories accumulated from seeing many genuine amulets, remembering the details of important features and flaws that appear on the amulet, familiarity with the material composition, the tactile experience, and examining the material composition of the amulet from each era, which may include considering the patina, the age of the material, or the reactions of the metal. Sometimes it's a sense or feeling derived from Buddhist artha, perception of age, sacredness, or the unique artistry of a genuine amulet. These are aspects that are difficult to explain scientifically. It depends on individual experience, inherited knowledge, oral tradition, lineage information, as well as ancient texts or records. Although this may not be as systematic as modern methods, there are still texts or records that mention the creation of various types of amulets. Experts often refer to stories passed down from older generations, information inherited from ancestors, or from elders who are deeply involved in the field. These are usually not clearly documented in writing. The process of coming together to establish standards or consensus often lacks a unified voice. In some cases, groups of well-known or influential individuals in the field may come together to collectively determine what is considered authentic. However, this consensus is not always based on clear evidence. It may instead arise from shared interest or from creating a collective sense of whether a particular amulet is genuine or not. The notion of authenticity is often reinforced by mutual references, and when one group of individuals accepts a particular amulet as genuine, it leads to further mutual referencing, and this mutual referencing increases the credibility of the group, even though the criteria for judgment are not universal. The main problem that arises from relying on groups of individuals or collective feelings is the lack of scientific standards and universality. Judgments often depend on personal discretion, making them impossible to replicate or verify. Replicability, and it is difficult to prove a lack of transparency. The absence of clear criteria makes it easy for favoritism or even collusion to deceive others, especially in cases where a large number of counterfeit amulets enter the market, creating monopolistic power. Certain groups of experts have the authority to determine whether an amulet is genuine or not, which directly affects the price and the credibility of the amulets. Conflicts arise when there are no clear criteria, leading to disagreements in judgments among different groups of experts. This is why you are about to create a verification mechanism using equipment, and scientific evidence is extremely important to resolve the long-standing issues in the amulet community. Is the information from the past real or fake? And the approach to verification in search of the truth, these are very important questions you have raised regarding the credibility of historical information in the amulet community, which is the starting point of the problem you are trying to solve. Generally, historical information contains both elements that are true and elements that are inaccurate or even fabricated for certain purposes. From your research and learning about the stories and various problems, it should further emphasize the complexity of this information. The problem with historical data is the lack of systematic record keeping. Most information from the past tends to be oral tradition or informal records, resulting in a lack of accuracy, may have been distorted over time or by those who passed it down. As mentioned earlier, the influence of expert groups when certain individuals have the authority to determine authenticity means that the information disseminated may be guided or even fabricated to protect the interests of those groups. The mixing of factual information and False information means that, over time, genuine information about the creation of sacred materials or rituals may become mixed with fabricated details, which are created to support the making of counterfeit amulets or to increase the value of certain amulets. Lack of empirical evidence. Many pieces of information from the past lack scientific verification, makes it difficult to distinguish truth from belief or mere claims. In the approach to verifying and seeking the truth, what you are about to do is the correct path and is highly scientific. It begins with research and study and then proceeds to testing and experimentation in order to obtain reliable and factual information. Studying and conducting preliminary research involves gathering all relevant information, whether it be the history of creation, ancient records, texts, photographs, or information from knowledgeable people in the past. This includes studying various research papers, looking for studies related to the chemical formulas of the materials used in amulets from different eras, or geological studies related to the sources of those materials, as well as studying the tools used for examination, understanding how they work, the limitations of various scientific instruments, such as microscopes, X-ray fluorescence, SEM, scanning electron microscope, or other techniques used to analyze the composition and structure of objects, as well as testing and experimenting by analyzing samples of amulets that are believed to be authentic, especially if they are genuine amulets with clear provenance and are widely recognized. They should be analyzed using scientific instruments to create a reference database, reference data, regarding the material composition, structure, physical properties. Analyze samples of amulets that are suspected or do not match the expected period. Bring amulets believed to be counterfeit or altered for analysis to compare with the reference database. Identify any inconsistencies. Test for chemical and physical changes to understand how the materials in the amulet have altered over time, such as the formation of patina, metal reactions, or mineral crystallization. These factors can serve as indicators of age. Recording and collect statistical data. Record test results in detail, whether they are microscope photographs, graphs of elemental analysis, chemical reports, or other physical data. Build a statistical database and systematically store this information so that it can be analyzed and compared to identify clear patterns or correlations. Comparing data to discover the truth, using information from authentic amulets. Inauthentic amulets for comparison will help identify key features, flaws, or scientific characteristics, can be scientifically verified and replicated. Following these steps will lead to a scientific standard for amulet authentication and empirical evidence, which will help reduce ambiguity and lack of transparency in the industry and build lasting credibility for both buyers and sellers in a sustainable way. Thumbs up, creating a clear and factual history for amulets, turning truth into economic value on the right track. When we discover the truth through the verification process and scientific validation, the next crucial step is to systematically and clearly document the history of those amulets. As you mentioned, the objects we verify can create value and be converted into wealth, and this income generation will only be sustainable if there is clear documentation of their history, not just old stories passed down from the past. Why is it necessary to establish a clear history? In the past, the major problem was that the amulet industry relied mainly on oral tradition, which lacked concrete evidence. This led to unreliability, price manipulation, made it easy for fraud to occur. Establishing a clear history will help solve these problems, establish a new standard for the industry, increasing credibility, transparency. When there is a systematically recorded history, along with scientific evidence, buyers will have greater confidence in their buying and selling decisions. The chances of being deceived will be reduced. This also adds value to amulets that have a verified history, and clear certification will naturally have a higher value than amulets without information or those with unverifiable stories. It also facilitates trading, as clear data helps with price assessment, buying, selling, and investing in amulets in a more rational and serves as a standard to prevent impersonation. Detailed provenance helps prevent fake amulets from being easily passed off as genuine, since there are reference data that can be traced back. Sustainable preservation of information. Systematic record keeping helps preserve the body of knowledge about amulets for future generations to study and build upon. How can we create a clear provenance for amulets? Establishing a clear provenance requires information that has been verified and systematically organized as follows. Identification data of the amulet, which includes high-quality photographs taken from multiple angles front, back, sides, zoomed-in shots of important details such as the mold, distinctive marks, or unique features. Basic information includes the name of the amulet, the batch, the temple where it was made, the year of creation if known, as well as its dimensions, weight, other physical details. The results of verification and scientific evidence. Scientific verification results summarize the analysis of the material composition, specifying key chemical elements such as types of metals, minerals, or any special substances found. Results of structural examinations, such as microscopic images showing the internal texture, surface aging, or natural reactions indicating age. Other test data, if special techniques were used such as density measurement, XRF, or SEM analysis, should also be specified along with the results. The source of reference data should be indicated, stating which reference database or original authentic amulet the analysis was compared to. The history and provenance. Provenance and history results include a summary of information obtained from research into the creation history of the amulet, such as who created it, on what occasion, the related rituals, and the origin of the amulet. If known, specify where the amulet came from and how it has changed hands as far as can be verified, which helps increase credibility. Supporting documents, if any, such as certificates from associations or expert authentication certificates from the past, should be considered together with scientific results or any other relevant documents and included in the record. The person conducting the examination and the certifier. Verified and certified results should specify the name of the organization or individual who conducted the examination and certify the authenticity of the amulet, along with contact information and the date of examination. The systematic recording of this historical data can be used to create a certificate of authenticity issued by a reputable independent organization. This will become an important tool in driving transparency in the amulet market and raise its standards even further. Investing in the development of a robust historical record system will serve as crucial evidence to elevate the amulet industry from mere anecdotes to tangible, verifiable information and create sustainable economic value. Clear evidence. When the buying and selling of amulets is tied to transparency and tax compliance, you are presenting a progressive and highly concrete concept. Linking clear evidence to tax payments is a key factor in establishing transparency and genuine credibility for the amulet industry. This is a complete departure from the past, which relied solely on hearsay. So, what does clear evidence mean in the context of amulet trading? In this context, clear evidence does not refer only to scientific verification of the amulet itself, but also extends to the processes, information that confirms the financial transactions resulting from the buying and selling of amulets, especially when the value of amulets can generate income that can be converted into money. When income is generated, what follows is tax liability, and when taxes are paid, there must naturally be various documents and evidence to verify the transactions and establish a clear value that is the core of this concept. Therefore, clear evidence in this context refers to documents confirming the transaction, such as proof of transactions, a sales contract specifying details of the amulet, such as the model name, serial number if any, description, sale price, date, full name, and the seller, receipts, and tax invoices issued by the seller who is properly registered, whether as a legal entity or an individual who is required to register. Payment evidence such as bank transfer slips, proof of payment by check, or records of payment in other verifiable forms, as well as documentation certifying the value and origin proof of value and provenance, authenticity certificates, or certificates issued by verification agencies and experts who authenticate the amulet you are creating, which will include scientific analysis data and the history of that particular amulet, as well as its chain of ownership, provenance, and source information that can be traced to show who previously owned this amulet, which helps increase credibility and the appraised value. Appraisal documents from recognized experts or institutions, if necessary. Tax documentation certificates or evidence of tax submission, documents showing that all taxes related to the transaction have been properly paid, such as personal income tax or value-added tax, if applicable. For those who buy and sell as a profession or on a regular basis, there must be clear records of income and expenses. Why is linking to tax documentation important? Establish standards and accountability. When transactions are recorded and linked to taxes, those involved must take greater responsibility in providing accurate and truthful information and ensure correctness, preventing money laundering and crime. Transparent transactions and verifiable records will help reduce the chances of using amulets as a means for money laundering or illegal activities and generate revenue for the state. The taxes collected can be used for national development. It also demonstrates that the amulet industry is participating in the official economic development, elevating the industry to an international level. Transactions with proper documentation, integration with the tax system is a standard practice used in the art world and among high-value collectibles worldwide. Your idea is pushing the amulet industry into a new era of transparency, credibility, international standards, which will build confidence among buyers, sellers, and will be beneficial to the overall economy in a sustainable way. Satisfaction with the truth. When fake amulets are sold at the price of genuine ones, what does the law say? You have raised an important issue and is at the heart of the problem in the amulet industry. What we are talking about here is that sellers often use the buyer's satisfaction as a legal shield, especially in cases where amulets that were not produced in the correct batch or are fake are sold at prices equivalent to genuine amulets produced in the correct batch. Your point that satisfaction cannot be substituted for the truth is absolutely correct. And this is where the law comes into play. It's no longer just a matter of personal satisfaction. Satisfaction and deception are not the same, and the law does not remain silent. Even though the principle of buyer beware is a universal standard in general transactions, this principle has its limits. It cannot be used as an excuse to conceal actions that constitute fraud or deception. If you sell an amulet that was not made in the proper occasion counterfeit at the same price as a genuine amulet made in the correct occasion, with the intention of making the buyer believe it is genuine, and the buyer is deceived and believes it, and enters into a purchase agreement based on that misunderstanding, such actions are definitely illegal. It's no longer just a matter of satisfaction. The legal offenses that may arise in the case you mentioned could fall under several sections of the Criminal Code, including the offense of public fraud under Section 343, if your actions involve making false statements or concealing facts that should be disclosed, and if such actions are directed toward the public, such as posting sales advertisements online or in open markets accessible to the general public, if it results in obtaining someone else's property, the seller may be guilty of public fraud, which carries a heavier penalty than ordinary fraud. According to Section 341 of the Criminal Code, if the act is not directed toward the general public but is instead a fraud against a specific individual, it may constitute ordinary fraud, which is punishable by imprisonment and a fine. Violations under the Consumer Protection Act. Advertising or providing false information about amulets or deceiving consumers may fall under offenses specified in the Consumer Protection Act BE 2522, 1979, which contains provisions regarding false or exaggerated advertising, deceiving consumers, or selling products that cause misunderstanding about their origin, quality, or quantity. When can satisfaction be used? Satisfaction can only be used as a defense against liability when both the buyer and the seller are both fully aware and in agreement that the amulet is fake or was produced outside the proper occasion, and the buyer agrees to purchase at that price with a mutual understanding and willingness. For example, a souvenir shop clearly announces that these are replica amulets or newly made commemorative amulets, and the buyer purchases with the knowledge that it is a new or replica item, not under the impression that it is an authentic ancient amulet. In this case, it is considered a fully satisfactory transaction. Establishing verification mechanisms and marketing. How can this help? By creating verification mechanisms and marketing amulets with the goal of establishing clear evidence and transparent provenance will be key tools in addressing this issue, creating standards for identification. When there are verification agencies and certificates are issued that clearly specify which amulets were produced in the original batch and which amulets were not produced in the original batch, there will no longer be any excuses about misunderstandings or personal satisfaction. This transparency exposes fraud, and this mechanism will provide buyers with sufficient information to make informed decisions and can also be used as evidence to prosecute those who attempt to commit fraud. This creates accountability. Dealers who want to be credible must undergo verification by this mechanism, must provide truthful information. If they fail to do so, the market will naturally push them out. Promoting clear standards and strictly enforcing the law will be an important step in building trust and good governance within the amulet industry. Trust and faith versus deception. Why is it that in some cases legal action cannot be taken? You have pointed out the core of the problem that allows fraud to persist in the amulet industry, which is trust and confidence that buyers have in sellers or in those claiming to be experts, which often prevents victims from being able to take legal action. This is where the complexity of the problem and the need to establish transparent mechanisms becomes evident. Trust and confidence, how do they serve as a shield against deception? Often, the reason victims cannot pursue legal action is not due to a lack of legal provisions, but because proving fraudulent intent is difficult when the transaction is claimed to be based on trust or confidence. The key issue that arises is the lack of concrete evidence. Many amulet transactions in the past and at present are often conducted verbally or involve exaggerated claims about the product's qualities without any clear written documentation. This makes it difficult to prove that the seller had fraudulent intent from the outset. For example, a seller might say, "I'm not entirely sure if this amulet is 100% genuine, but it looks good to me. I bought it at a high price myself," or "It's a matter of personal belief, please judge for yourself." Such statements are used to avoid responsibility and shift the entire burden of decision-making onto the buyer. Citing personal expertise, some buyers may make a purchase because they trust the seller's judgment or expertise. Very often, the seller will claim, "I just assessed it based on my own knowledge. You were satisfied, so you decided to buy it." This turns a matter into one of differing opinions rather than objective facts. Deception and the acceptance of risk by buyers. In the amulet industry, many buyers are well aware of the risks involved in renting or worshipping inauthentic amulets, yet they still go ahead with the purchase driven by hope, faith, or misunderstanding. In some cases, when problems arise, it is difficult to prove that one has been completely deceived because it may be claimed that the buyer accepted the risk themselves. The complexity in proving false facts is that, for fraud to be established, it must be proven that the seller made a false statement or concealed information that should have been disclosed. If the seller merely makes vague claims, such as saying this amulet has great sacred power without confirming its authenticity, it is difficult to hold them legally accountable. This has an impact on the amulet industry. This situation benefits those who exploit legal loopholes, taking advantage of people's lack of knowledge and the trust of others to sell counterfeit amulets at high prices. The ones who lose out are the buyers, who end up wasting money on amulets that are not authentic, or genuine amulet dealers whose credibility is undermined, affecting the overall market. How can this problem be solved? Addressing this issue requires structural changes and the creation of a system where truth takes precedence over mere trust, establishing scientific and standardized methods of verification, gaining acceptance as you are doing, having an organization that can issue certificates of authenticity based on scientific data will make the truth about the amulets undeniable. This will drive the recording of transactions, the use of sales contracts, receipts, or proof of money transfers that specify the details of the amulet, and a clear value will serve as important evidence in lawsuits if it can be proven that fraud has occurred. Educating consumers, campaigning to raise buyers' awareness of the importance of verification, requesting evidence, exercising caution in transactions will help reduce the chances of falling victim. Supporting strict law enforcement when clearer evidence is available is crucial, and government agencies must prioritize and take decisive action against offenders to set a standard for society. By creating mechanisms that bring clear evidence and truth as criteria for transactions, you are making a significant step toward eliminating fraud that relies solely on trust and faith based on past relationships and lead the amulet industry into a truly transparent era. You have laid out a clear and systematic plan excellently. This is a comprehensive roadmap and a rational approach to establishing transparency and create true and sustainable value for the amulet industry. Starting with registration is the most crucial first step, which will lead to the implementation of all the guidelines you have outlined. To summarize and expand on each point you have planned, to provide an overview of the mechanisms that will be established as steps toward transparency and sustainable value in the amulet industry. Launching a business to provide authentication and registration services is the heart of the system. It is necessary to establish a legal entity or neutral and credible organization to serve as the body for authentication and certification of amulets. This establishment should involve cooperation from scientific experts, historians, genuine authorities in the amulet field in order to create scientific and internationally recognized standards. The creation of various database systems. This system serves as a vital repository. A large-scale digital database must be established to collect information on amulets that have been authenticated and officially registered, categorized into a reference database of authentic amulets. This database incorporates scientific data such as material composition, structure, and the age of the amulet created during specific periods, which serves as a standard for comparison. The registered amulet database records detailed information for each amulet that has been authenticated or found inauthentic, including its history, photographs, analysis results, owner information, if they wish to disclose it, as well as the presentation of data in various document formats to ensure the credibility and can be practically utilized. There must be clear certification documents issued. These may be divided into a verification report, which is a summary document of the scientific analysis results for each amulet, and a certificate of authenticity or non-authenticity, which is an official document clearly stating the status of the amulet. The inspection and registration to declare ownership. This is about establishing the identity of each individual amulet. Once an amulet has passed inspection, it will be registered and the owner's information will be recorded. A system may be used to keep the owner's data confidential, but it can verify identity when buying or selling, which helps prevent impersonation, unauthorized claims. This gives the amulet a clear record of ownership changes, a well-documented provenance.